Welcome to installment number 8 of WestEdge Wednesdays, the talks and programming from the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home Theater at the WestEdge Design Fair 2025, designed by Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs. And the program that we have for you today is a masterclass, if there ever was one. This was one that I just had an opportunity. I sat back in the back of the room and just kind of listened for a while. It was so much fun. Enduring Modernism, a retrospective with Marmol Radziner. Join architects Leo Marmol and Ron Radziner for a rare conversation about their influential Southern California work. Known for blending architecture, landscape, and interiors, they discuss their design philosophy and West Coast modernism evolution. The talk covers creating meaningful, environmental, responsive architecture. They also reflect on design's lasting impact on memory and living. This talk, featuring Leo and Ron, was moderated by the incomparable Mayor Russ, a Southern California design institution. And again, so much fun to listen to. I'm going to let you hear it, but I'm just going to gush for a minute. Just what an incredible talk, and I think you're going to love this. Thank you again, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, and Kim Gordon of Kim Gordon Designs. Love this. You're going to hear all of it right after this. This was the second year that Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, sponsored and presented the theater at the WestEdge Design Fair. So appreciative to them. In addition to everything that they do for sponsorship, they also brought in partner Best Buy, partner Geek Squad, Hisense, and made possible a video wall to Kim Gordon's design that just, it made it pop. And I think that it's so important to understand that the most important word in design today is service. You know, product is important, price is important, selection is important, but service, stellar service, makes all the difference in the world. And if you're a designer, if you're in the trade, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home has a simply remarkable trade program. Their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade-up program unlike any you've ever experienced before. You have a chance to earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, so much more. I can't even tell you everything here. So make sure to check them out. Thank you, Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, for your sponsorship and partnership at the WestEdge Design Fair this year, and for presenting WestEdge Wednesdays, which you're about to hear right now.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday with us here. I'm thrilled to have Leo Marmol and Ron Radziner, two luminaries in the world of Los Angeles design. And they founded their firm in 1989. And what's going on? Oh, yeah. And the world has changed so much. Los Angeles has changed so much. The design industry has changed so much. And so I'm really looking forward to getting their perspective on where we've been, but more important, where we are and where we might be going. But to start, I'm just curious, because I was thinking about this when I was preparing questions for you. How did you two actually connect? Is there a meet cute? You dropped your chocolate bar in my peanut butter. Or, that's an old commercial that most of you remember. How did you two connect, and what was the idea?
You can. Go ahead. You start. We went to school together. So we studied at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and we lived at a co-op a co-op known as the Ark. And it was basically all of the problem children from Cal Poly. They tended to live in this one place. And it was this old brick two-story hotel right on a main drag, and upstairs it was a double-loaded corridor, so we each had our own room, and downstairs there was a shared living room and dining room, and once a week you would cook for the entire crew and all the guests that were invited. So you only had to do it once a week, and you had a home-cooked meal every night.
And it was, the rent was $62.50 a month. There were 13 of us. It truly was this condemned building that literally, but the great thing about that, and it's gone now, there's a Circle K in its place.
It's a Jiffy Lube.
Oh, Jiffy Lube.
Jiffy Lube,
okay.
yeah.
And
just to be precise, because we're being transcribed, so we have to be accurate.
But because it was going to be torn down, we really had free rein to just alter it, destroy it, make holes through it. It really was wonderful. And yeah, Leo and I both lived there.
In other words, it's surprising
terrific.
we survived because there were many alterations made.
Right, so yeah, Leo's room was down the hall from my room, and that is where we met. And then, I guess to continue, I think that in San Luis Obispo, people generally went, when they graduated, to San Francisco or LA, a few people to San Diego. We ended up in LA, and we had other friends who were in Los Angeles. And at that point, I think we all had other jobs for different architects. And then, as I think many young architects do in Los Angeles, you're all doing little projects on the side, some tiny cafe, a little kitchen remodel, whatever. And there was some point, I think, of just, we've got some work, well, let's try to do this together.
It wasn't planned. It was just kind of an accidental thing that organically grew.
And give me a sense of what the Los Angeles design scene, or more, even internationally, are we in the dying days of postmodernism? Are we in decon? Is there a prevailing mode? Is there, what's hot in LA architecture at that moment? I'm curious what the scene is.
I think it is the dying days of postmodernism. And it's, so Morphosis, Tom Main is doing his early work, which is still sort of a bit postmodern. Projects in Venice. Venice was definitely sort of the hotbed at that time of architects and interesting little projects. Craig Hodgetts. They were doing the end of postmodernism work. And you kind of felt it too. I remember early on in that point too, going to hear John Lautner speak at SCI-Arc. SCI-Arc was in Santa Monica. And he was railing against everybody, of course. And in a certain...
Except Frank Lloyd Wright.
That's right, except Mr. Wright, as he called him. That's right, he was the only person he really respected. And it's interesting because certainly then, pretty quickly as we got into the early 90s, there was a return to modernism in the best way, I'd say. Back to that history of wonderful California modernism.
We always had an interest in modernism, but the community did not. There was no real focus on modern design at the time. I came to Los Angeles primarily because of that history of modern residential work that is here. I grew up in Northern California, so coming south was like defecting from your country. And but I did. I came here because of the history.
And I mean, it's funny that you should mention it because now, Neutra and Schindler and Pierre Koenig, they've become, sort of bywords of real estate listings and mood boards and all of that. But, it's funny to remember a moment before the term mid-century modern had actually sort of galvanized what this idea was, both in furniture and in architecture. So in your early work together, were there ever any attempts to sort of dovetail a little bit with that kind of, those early Tom Maine, Venice, what was that cute Italian restaurant that, what was that thing called?
Angeli?
Angeli, remember Angeli? And,
And 72 Market Street,
72
which is a
Market,
beauty.
Kate Mantellini, all of that. Were you always completely committed to the sort of modernist ideal of clarity, reduction? Was that from the beginning of your practice the hallmarks of your work?
I mean, honestly, I think it really was. And
in other words, we haven't changed at all. We're exactly the same.
But I think it was, and it's interesting. Of course, as a young architect trying to do work in Los Angeles, those first years, you're continuing to just do small projects. And I remember, I think the first project that we were able to do that was more personal was a little garage and studio at the back of a property in Santa Monica Canyon, the Guten Tag studio. It's kind of the first, this little concrete block base with a little cedar-sided studio on top. And it was quite pure. And I think it has sort of set the tone for our work. And at the same time, for whatever reason, we were lucky enough to begin to start working on some mid-century restorations for those few people that did care about that. And that helped us get on our way in a way that was meaningful to us.
I think we were also always interested in the Bauhaus and that association between design and craft and the kind of unification of the design world with the execution side of things. So for us, the design build perspective was something also very early in the practice.
So we'll get, I want to dive deep into the design build aspect in a moment, but I'm curious, you mentioned this little, sort of garage unit thing. Well, are there projects that are milestones for Marmol Radziner when you think back, like this marked a turning point or this marked a moment where we had really planted our flag? What do you think those major markers are, especially in the early decades of the practice?
Yeah, we're conferring.
No,
right now.
like it feels like you're cheating.
I think maybe from a preservation perspective, when we began working on the Kaufman House, it was 1993, and there really was no interest in modernism at the time. There was no industry of modern restoration. And so in many ways, we had to develop a roadmap as to how to address modern buildings that were now becoming of age and needing real care and attention. And so from a preservation perspective, probably the Kaufman House, but at the same time, the Ward House, I think.
Well, around the same time, so we had finished this little studio, and then, which is in Santa Monica Canyon, and then very much right after that, we were hired by clients in Rustic Canyon to do a project, a new home. And in a way, I think that new home, the Ward residence, became the grown-up version of the little Guten Tag studio that had been a bit of a test case. And it was very much around the same time as the Kaufman House was happening. And both were projects that we worked on as architect and builder. And I think they both kind of solidified paths forward, both in the restoration world and the new home world in really, really nice ways.
And of course, the restoration of the Kaufman House is this sort of watershed moment, not just for Marmol Radziner, but for architecture in Southern California and for modernism around the world. I mean, it was really Palm Springs, which had been like the insane history of modernism there, was not really a thing yet. This idea, you know, all of this, the glamour of the Slim Aarons photos, and had sort of been forgotten to these successive waves of architectural isms. And it was such a moment that brought your name into wide circulation. Did it ever become an issue of clients thinking, oh, they do restorations, they don't do ground, like that? Were you intimate? You're so intimately connected with this idea of rescuing important modernist structures. Did that ever become a hindrance to the evolution of your practice in any way, or was it always just great, people are talking?
Yeah, I don't see it as a hindrance. I think in many ways, we always kept very much alive the conversation of new projects. And so I think it fell to us to make sure that interest of ours in new housing was there. I think for us, it was an interest in the home. And certainly we had a modern perspective on that. But the real interest was in studying notions about home and what that meant and how we could translate the historic lessons that we were taking from the historic properties and apply them to the new project. So I think for us, even on the preservation side, it was as though those were classrooms for us to think about notions of living.
Mm-hmm. And I think to this day, the restoration work might be a third of the work we do, and the new homes 2/3 of the work we do. And we enjoy both. I think we continue to learn from those restorations, and I'm sure in different ways it affects our new work. But yeah, we really do love the opportunities that both present.
And give me your sense of the state of architectural preservation today in LA, in Southern California, with, you know, there are always debates about like, oh, this is getting torn down. Well, you know, wasn't so great to begin with. You know, not every Neutra is the greatest Neutra. That not every Schindler was deserving of the reverence of the King's Roadhouse. What's your view of where things stand today? Has LA done a good job in preserving what's important? Have we let some things slip through the cracks?
Well, we talk about this often, and it is a controversial subject. I think first and foremost, we are practitioners. We are architects, and we are trained to make change in the landscape. And so as architects, I think often we are the ones that are more flexible about accepting the need for change and for taking historic properties not as so precious that we can't touch them. There's this fetish that's grown within our industry around historic fabric. And I think that's often at the detriment to keeping our buildings functional and alive by today's standards. And sometimes we are at odds with the preservation community as preservationists because we do believe things need to continue to evolve in our cities. And that means losing some historic buildings, while at the same time fighting to preserve the ones that are truly significant. And there lies the fun conversation.
When we restored the Kaufman House, no one cared about these modern buildings. Okay, so that was that extreme. But now I think we are at the opposite end, where every modern building is deemed to be sacred for a variety of reasons. I think sometimes because of the architecture, sometimes it's just that people don't want change. I mean, I was kind of happy this week, being on the west side. There's a building on San Vicente, the Berry building. It's an old commercial structure. It's been fenced off and abandoned now for a number of years. the family that developed the building, which was Charlie Munger's family, his family literally developed the building originally when it was built in 1960. Okay, and it was deemed historic, whatever it was now, 10 years ago, because of the architecture. Also, though, because Dutton's bookstore had been one of the tenants. So what I think this is saying, and finally, after all these years, it looks like they're going to be able to tear it down, and I think they should be able to. It's a decent building, but it doesn't rise to the level of something that needs to be preserved. But imagine this, client. Oh, be careful. Don't make sure your building isn't too good that you're having the architect do, because 50 years from now, you may not be able to tear it down. And also, make sure you don't have any really significant, wonderful tenants, because that could be a problem too, and you may not be able to tear it down because you rented it to too good of a person, too good of a company. It's ridiculous.
Does anybody want to sit down? There are seats around here. If anybody wants to get a seat, you're welcome to take a seat. All are welcome here. It's so interesting, and when I see the legacy of the great, what we would call the case study crowd, and see bastardizations of it. Like, I can't tell you how many houses I go to scout where the architect is telling me, well, we're looking at Neutra, we're looking at Schindler, we're looking at this one, and they've got like a living room that you could put an entire Neutra house just in the living room. So no idea about scale, no idea about just sort of conservation of materials and precision of planning. What do you make of the current scene, I guess more developer scene, of are houses continuing to become elephantine, if that's the right word, these houses that they're building? We used to have something that we would laughingly call McMansions. And it was, a giant French chateau, like in Beverly Hills, and but made of balsa wood and Elmer's glue and all of that. Now we have something that seems to be popular that I would call a McModern, which is a giant scale thing that, because of the materials, because of the sort of rigor of the planning, begins to take on commercial like qualities. When you look at the current LA buildingscape of what's going up, is there still this drive for bigger, make it bigger, make it bigger? And this all, of course, dovetails with a conversation that we'll have a bit later about what's going to happen in the Palisades in the effort to rebuild the fire. But when you look at what's getting built around LA, does it continue to expand? Does it? What are the forces that you see in play?
Okay. I think that certainly many of these McModerns, as you call them, a lot of them, not all of them, many are developer spec home based. And certainly there are clients who, private homeowners who design their home to be that way as well. I think the problem is property values are very high, and people feel a need to max out the buildable area on their site, unfortunately. And it does, it leads to these terribly scaled buildings. And somehow there's a perception, I just don't believe it's true, but that is what is desired by the next buyer or whoever that might be. It's terrible. We have a couple projects right now we're doing on pretty large lots. We're fortunately, and I would admit, maybe a little surprisingly, because it doesn't always happen, we're But it happens often enough for us. I think, fortunately, people who come to us often, they care about the garden, they care about the landscape, they care about outdoor space. So often they're not pushing to overbuild. But I think that's where it stems from. If you're going to do a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot house, to me that's already huge. Well, God, you better have a lot of property. And then maybe you can pull it off by breaking it apart enough to make it work.
I think one of the lessons from the historic work that we want to embrace is the issue certainly of efficiency, and we've lost a sense of efficiency at such great scale. But I think maybe even more importantly, the notion of connection. Modernism so often is simplified to this notion of a style, and our perspective on it is less so about the style and more about this notion that connection is something fundamentally important when we talk about homes, when we talk about living. And part of that connection is certainly internal. The open plan allowed us to connect more comfortably within the family unit, between each other, but the connection to the outside, to the connection to the exterior. And I think we all so long to feel more connected to the rhythm of nature outside our walls. And we as architects, I think, sometimes forget that what's important about the interior space is what's happening outside of the space. And so often those big properties, they're right up against the setback lines, and we just lose that connection to the garden that we see as so fundamental to comfortable living.
Well, and one of your books is essentially, this is the theme of the book, is the building in landscape. And has landscape always been part of, you do obviously design build, interiors. Has landscape always been part of your practice?
It has. Even those early days, and even at the Kaufman House for that matter, back then we would just do it. We didn't have landscape architects on staff, so I would admit that it was a little ad hoc. But when we're designing homes, we are definitely thinking about the home itself and the interior space, but we're thinking about the garden and the landscape at the same time. It would be impossible to even imagine drawing without considering trees and garden that surrounds the house. So I think it is just our nature of how we work.
I remember very early on working on projects, and I'm an architect at heart, and so landscape is something very abstract to me. But I was always so amazed that we'd start talking about the landscape, and Ron would talk about it in terms of the names of the plants and the growing type and the type of light it needs. I have no idea how you gained this knowledge. It always blew me away, and maybe that's the secret to success, is associate with people that are way smarter and more talented that you can learn from, and all the goodwill that they can produce kind of rubs off on you as well.
Thanks very much. I really don't think it was just...
Where did that come from?
No,
How did you know that?
I really think
what is that plant? I don't know.
I really think this is the case, and my sister happens to be here. But I really think I grew up in a home where we didn't have a gardener. And I just think I was just out in the garden a lot. Oh, you got to go trim that. You got to go trim that, mow the lawn. And I think I just sort of learned about all the plants in the garden.
I trim trees too.
So
I have no idea what the name of the tree was.
Yeah. I grew up in downtown Baltimore. So there was no garden to tend. But you're both welcome to come over and deal with my tiny garden, because I've never quite developed the green thumb. I've got the black mayor thumb of death when it comes to trying to cultivate. Fire is going to come up throughout this conversation because Los Angeles is obviously still sort of grieving. It was not even a year ago. The Eaton fire and the Palisades fire. while we're on the subject of landscape, how are lessons learned and ideas about fire resilience going to affect the landscape work? I mean, we hear a lot about planting up to the building. Are there new regulations that are coming into place? Give me a sense of how the fires and the conversations it has sparked, for want of a better word, about building more sustainably for the future going to affect your work in landscape.
Okay, all right. Well, this is very much of a discussion right now, and there are regulations that are coming down. I think the thing that many of you have heard about possibly is Zone 0, which is all about what can you plant between 0 and 5 feet away from the structure. And the State Department of Forestry is really pushing for a no planting at all in that first 5 feet, which I think many of us, myself included, think is a really extreme position, and not even necessarily, and really not one that really makes a lot of sense. I mean, the right kind of planting that's well irrigated near the base of the building, I believe really can help with reducing the problem of embers as they come up to the building. Certainly, look, vines that are growing on buildings, especially wood buildings, well, that is crazy. And there's bamboo and eucalyptus. There's many plants that we really need to wean ourselves off of and move towards a more native, appropriate landscape. So I think absolutely the fires will change how we plant gardens, but I hope not to that extreme of literally nothing from 0 to 5 feet. I do not see that as the answer.
I think we have to caution ourselves from the overreaction to disaster, and sometimes human nature being what it is, we want to go farther than we really should in protecting ourselves. But we have to remind ourselves that most of the housing stock that was lost in both fires was old technology. It was old building stock. There was virtually no protection against embers, certainly, and flames. Building standards today are far more robust, even with current standards before the fire. But it is natural that after any disaster, after the Northridge earthquake, the structural codes were completely rewritten to respond to earthquakes. We will respond from a code perspective, but we just have to caution against going to a place where we lose some flexibility that we really should retain as designers.
Well, I think, Leo, to your point, home hardening is really the most important thing, more so than the landscape side of it. And because obviously there's just any small vulnerability in your home where embers can come in, well, it's kind of over. So I think, and to your point, I think the new codes have been terrific that way, even from before the fires.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the most stringent and most practical fire hardening code happens to be the energy code that demands that every nook and cranny, every crack gets sealed up so that energy is not lost through the envelope of the building. And that provides so much security against embers. And embers are in many ways the leading edge of the problem. If you're confronting flame, well, by then in many ways it's too late. It's embers that are often the biggest culprit in these mass fires.
And this conversation is, inextricably bound up in a larger conversation about sustainability, and something that for a time we used to sort of ghettoize under the rubric of green design. Remember, green design, whatever that amorphous thing was. But if you're giving the architecture and construction trades a grade for how far we've advanced in the last 20 years in materials, in recycling, of all these things that fall under that rubric of like green design, of building for a more sustainable future. How are we doing, and how many of your clients are pushing you for more energy efficiencies, more water efficiencies, all of those kinds of things, looking towards the future? How do you think we're doing as an industry?
I mean, this is a complex question. It's like so many good questions. The problem, you can attack the problem on so many levels. Certainly we have technologies today that are robust and spectacular and are helping us fight the challenge that we have of global warming. And yet at the same time, politically, we are completely failing because we're no longer able to build housing close to where we work. And so we have a housing policy that is, easily graded as an F because the only efficient place to build is way outside of our urban core because of politics and because of fear and because of our willingness to keep others from coming into our community. And so the greenest thing we can do is stop being a fucking NIMBY and allow people to build more housing in your communities, densify our city, accept the need for taller buildings that will bring more people closer to where they need to survive. And so I think that often we get caught up in the kind of edges of hot technologies when really the problem is us and our unwillingness to allow our cities to accept enough people to really be green.
So what Leo's talking about is I think is what you're saying is accurate. It's all about the planning and zoning code and allowing greater density in the urban core of the city. And I think there, we have failed. And I think we're starting to maybe make some changes that are taking us in a more positive place. I think the successes have been, especially in the state of California, on the building code side, like we definitely, whether our clients want to or not, and most really do want to build green, but the state of California has really pushed energy codes into a place that is terrific. I mean, I think really...
The state of California has pushed the code.
Oh, they've pushed the codes very far. I mean, the state of California is absolutely in the forefront in the country. So homes that we build now versus what we could have built 25 years ago, I mean, you really can't compare. The energy efficiency is much better. All of it, and as we were saying too, it also allowed these new homes to be more fire resistant, even if that wasn't the original idea. There's homes that we did in the Palisades in the early 90s, they were all additions to old homes that burned down. All of the newer homes that we did in the Palisades survived, were totally fine. And I think it's very much about the building code.
Yeah, and I think you can go back to the concept of efficiency within the modern dialogue, and that smaller really is in many ways better from a sustainability perspective. We really don't need as much as we often think we need. And so if we could build smaller, have better connection to the exterior space, design in a more modern dialogue within the home, I think that just goes so far. Sustainability is an argument against private planes. It's an argument against that kind of growth that you were talking about in scale.
Every time one of these planes, I'm like, oh, it's one of those billionaire oligarchs. It's Peter Thiel crop dusting with poison all over the thing. Sorry, that's a tangent there.
You know there's a transcript.
Oh yeah, I mean, just having said Peter Thiel with my phone, with my notes on, it's already gone to central processing. Palantir has like an agent at my house, and yeah, I'm headed to Guantanamo soon for a number of reasons. Part of this conversation, I'm curious about your adventures in prefab, Marmol Radziner's adventures. Can you give me a little history of where you've been? And there's now like I know that I read something, but I read so many things and I smoke so much weed, it just goes out of my head. What did I just read about Marmol Radziner and your investment in prefab?
So yes, it's true. We have a history in prefab. We are now coming back to it, really as a response to the devastation that we're seeing in the Palisades and Altadena. But every modernist that existed was interested in prefabrication because, of course, modernism grew out of the Industrial Revolution. Modernism spawned this incredible kind of interest and experimentation in building technology. And out of that came this revolution of mass production that we've seen so many of our industrial design elements kind of flourish under, automobiles, etc. The home was always seen as much more of a personal enterprise, a personal endeavor, and so the home has never really been able to be mass-produced effectively. But everyone tried. We tried, and we stopped after the 2008 crash for a number of reasons. And so we learned a lot from that experience, and I think we're taking those lessons and we're now approaching it in a more, I think, mature, I hope more thoughtful way than we did initially, which was probably very naive and overly ambitious.
I think that if I go back to look at our prefab work that we did from 2004 to about 2011 or 12, I think I'm really proud of it as architecture. And within our core group of people at Marmol Radziner that were around at that time, we all look back on it with great fondness of what we were able to do. But yeah, we were completely naive, a little crazy, much younger, which probably helped us too, to just like, okay, let's go for it. And fortunately, we made it out the other side. And here we are, I think, at a place now where trying to look back at prefab and do it a little more carefully. Let's really try to figure this out in a way that truly can be sustainable and bring our clients some good homes quickly that will create some good livable space for them at an affordable price.
Because I think for us, we do feel compelled. We have to accept, and we all know, that we have such a crisis of construction cost. And we're speaking as builders. We struggle every day with the tyranny of construction cost and the inability to get the architectural design that we want because we simply can't afford to get there. And so we hope that prefab will offer some way to start to address some of the inefficiencies and hopefully find a way to bring costs into a little more sense of control.
And is that also part of, beyond prefab, your design build practice of having your own workshops, doing the contracting? I was fascinated that you said that design build was always on on your minds and part of the business of Marmol Radziner from the beginning. Can you give me just, like, maybe we should have even started here, just a sense of the scale of Marmol Radziner, the operation, like, you know, the different departments, the design build, how much of your work is in residential, is in commercial, like, just give me a sense of where the firm is at. Here we are. What is 25 minus 89, 2025 minus 1989? 36?
We'd rather not count.
Yeah, don't count. Give me a small snapshot
Sure.
of how many people,
The metrics?
divisions. Yeah.
We are unique in that we started as traditional architects. We very quickly added the construction services. We also added landscape architecture and interior design. And in support of our construction services, we have a cabinet shop and a metal shop in El Segundo. And then also in support of our construction operation, we have a concrete crew, a landscape installation crew, a finished carpentry crew. So we self-perform many services. At this point, we have an office in San Francisco. We have an office in New York. So it is a machine that exists out there with over 200 people. What's so fascinating about all of those components is there are projects where we are the architect. There are ones where we're the architect and landscape architect. We add all those components. There are other projects where we're the landscape architect and we're collaborating with an architect. There are projects where we're the interior designer and we're collaborating with architects and landscape architects. Our construction services build projects where there's an outside architect, so we are there in the service of working for other architects. Our shops build cabinets and do metal work for other general contractors. There are projects where we are the architect, there's a separate general contractor, we're the landscape architect, but our shops are providing subcontractor services to the general contractor, and we're installing the landscape and doing cabinets. So it's a very multifaceted office. What's so wonderful about that means we have a wide spectrum of experiences and backgrounds. And I will say, what I get the most pleasure from is that we have such incredibly committed, talented people in a wide spectrum of services, and to see the work that they do every day is awe-inspiring. And that's where I feel so fortunate, is to be able to work with some of the most talented people I've known.
Yeah, I think that we have finished carpenters that if we have questions as we're designing some intricate wood detail in some home, we can literally talk to someone who may end up actually constructing that for us and just make sure we're doing it right. I think just one other thing, to go back to the beginning, yes, we started doing design build very early on, but it was really just us, and Chris, who's here too, is doing this too. We would literally at times, I guess we're gonna go shovel buckets of gravel in here for the French drain, or we're going to go lay the stone. I mean, we were just doing the work ourselves. The most menial of the work, let's haul the trash to the dump. It was literally stuff like that.
I cleaned a lot of job sites.
It's evolved. It's evolved a lot. I think that approach, this sort of, I think, very organic growth it's gone through, it's allowed ourselves and the whole team to kind of grow along with it in really a wonderful way. And I absolutely believe that we're all better, speaking as an architect first, I think we're all better architects in our office for having worked this way, because we're really in a position where we have to take responsibility for what we draw when we build it. Practically, aesthetically, and financially, and you look at you look at how you draw differently when that is the situation.
Yeah, and you also respect the notion of collaboration much more enthusiastically. I mean, the reality of our profession is that it's a team sport. It is a collaborative enterprise. The individual, there's never an individual, and we want to hold up whoever great architect that you want to hold up, or landscape architect, as though they are individuals, as if Frank Gehry accomplishes what he accomplishes because of one person. That's just a cultural mythology that we as architects promote. It's just not real. The reality is it takes thousands of people to make very complex things happen. And in today's construction world, it's not surprising that most of what's built out there is mediocre, because mediocre is hard. It's really hard to achieve mediocre buildings. And then you see a building that elevates itself a bit more. That means people are really sacrificing their personal lives and often their economic stability, all kinds of things to make that happen. And then every now and then, something really magical happens on the landscape. That's miraculous. Because it is a level of difficulty and complexity that most people don't realize. And so really good architecture, I hold with such awe and praise for the people that are making that happen.
Well, I'm not going to get into it. Okay, auteur theory aside, we're running out of time, so I just have a couple of quickies that I really want to get to. You talked about the number of people, the collaborative nature. So many architects, successful, prominent architects working today have come out of Marmol Radziner. And I'm curious, when you see these people getting recognition, or you even come up against them competing for a project, are you filled with pride, or do you think, oh, those little shits? There's this whole diaspora of Marmol alumni, and so I'm just curious.
Yeah. No. I think that I don't know. I guess I feel like I just turned 65 last month. Leo's about to be there too. I think that we. Oh, sorry. I just mean. I think. I just feel like I don't know. I think we're old enough at this point. It feels really good to have mentored these young architects and see them doing great work. And I'd like to believe that some of what they've taken as they go forward, it is a method of working and a way of thinking about architecture and craft, building, all of that. And I think we're proud of that, truly.
No question.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. We are incredibly proud of it. We invest a lot in training people, and I'm not sure that happens in all architectural firms, but when you have the complexity of organization that we have, I mean, you have to commit to process and training. So we invest in that, and I almost get weepy when people come up to me and tell me how grateful they are for the background and underpinning that we gave them, even though we compete with them. And often they get the work, which does piss me off, but in a healthy, fun, competitive way. But no, I think we have incredible pride, and we've seen wonderfully talented people come out of our firm, and I love the fact that they come to me and say, often I think about, what would Leo do in that situation?
And I know you're working on, high-rises, apartment buildings, commercial. Your work at Lever House. Was it Lever House? Yeah. There's a range of things. Is there a project type that you've not been asked to work on that you're very eager, or that you've thought about for years? Is there something that no one has asked you to do that you would love to find a client to ask you to do?
Well, Okay, I mean, I'm not sure this is the most significant, but I think we do really love the home and doing homes. And so I think the offshoot of that, because it's kind of fantasy home to me, would be a really wonderful hotel resort. Like I would really, that would be fun. You know, very high end, of course. You know, just have as much freedom design-wise as possible.
Is there hospitality in the
There's
portfolio? Bits,
Bits,
Bits
but
and
not.
pieces.
But
We've
it's like,
designed
okay, let's.
resorts, but we've never had them.
But I think
see
yes,
them
that
to
would be wonderful.
completion.
And then after our experience with high rise in downtown LA, I think, which was a high-end apartment building, I think to get to do another tower, you know, some sort of wonderful residential tower, it was much more fascinating than I thought it would be, and I think we'd love to get to do another one.
Okay. And I'm curious, have you done anything, because as we're talking about ages and, you know, my, like, is there a party going on out there? Yeah, I know. Keep it down now. We've only got a few minutes left. Is there anything in the, because I'm thinking about my retirement, which I'm desperate to, I'm hoping Condé Nast fires me, like, and you can put that in the transcript, because stick a fork in me, I'm done. But thinking about senior living and talking to friends and other like lonely childless gays like me of, you know, is there anything in the senior world that you've been involved with or thought about a communal living for seniors?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm going to be that client.
Yeah.
I mean, I think. Well, that's interesting.
A co-housing project would
Like,
be
That
fun.
would be great,
You know,
actually.
which
Or
I would love more
yeah.
thinking to go
let's
into.
create a
like just
commune
a place
co-housing
where
project in Big
you're not
Sur.
going to murder your
Yeah.
neighbors, but you might be able to share like a library and you know, those kinds of things, a pool.
It goes back to the Schindler House from
Exactly.
the 1920s.
Exactly.
When Schindler did a co-housing. I mean, that house
Yeah.
is
And weren't
so
they all like
revolutionary.
swapping wives and husbands too?
It was just
You know?
magical.
Yeah, it was like pure magic.
And drugs.
All right, I've got to wrap this baby up. Leo
Just
and
getting
Ron
interesting.
are available after the talk for all of your personal questions, but I'm getting the shepherd's crook. Time to wrap it up. But I want to thank Leo Marmol and Ron Radziner for being leaders in this community for decades and for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pacific Sales, Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company. Thank you, Kim Gordon Designs. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mayor. What an incredible talk. I love this, and I hope you did too. Please make sure that you are subscribing to Convo by Design so you get every episode automatically to your feed the moment that they're published. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.